push that too hard. Right, this is the, I've divided the coast of Chile into three patches, just to give some idea. Up here is Valdivia, and that's where we made our landfall. Came down here into this wonderful area here called the Gulf of Vancouver. This island, Chiloe, big island, and I guess it's 30, 40 miles across the Gulf there. Lovely islands in here. This is very Waiheke-like. Here is like Fiordland. You've got the ice cap from the Andes that stretch all the way, and the Andes come down this line here. You've got the ice cap and snowy mountains up here. Fjords like Milford Sound all the way down. And that very nice cruising area continues on down here, right the way down here, until you get to the Gulf of Penas. And that's this area here. And the Gulf of Penas, Penas means sorrows. And it's a bit of a horrible area because the swells come roaring in and they reflect around inside this gulf, and it really sets up a big sea. And you've got to come out from this bay here, this area here called Bahia Ana Pink. You've got to get out around here. There's some shelter on the outside here, some lovely little calitas or coves, and then down to here. So it's basically a voyage that it actually, we do know that the ferries that go up and down the coast, they're the same size as our Cook Strait ferries. They'll hold up for 48 hours waiting for the weather. So it's a pretty grim sort of a place at times. And we wanted to be down and across the Gulf of Penas by Christmas last year. But back to Valdivia. It's a relief to be over there. And it was sort of it'd been a goal of ours to get to Valdivia for a long time. And we stayed actually 5 weeks in Valdivia doing things like varnishing, putting a tent over the cockpit because you need this cover over the cockpit because the winds are so cold. We double glazed all the windows inside the boat and all the hatches. Even did some varnish work, but we sorted out chart systems, repairs, and all the sort of things you have to do after quite a long voyage. We even got some sightseeing in. I'd made a rash promise some years before that said, well, if you sail across the Pacific with me, I'll take you to Machu Picchu. And on this particular day, we'd been there a week or so, a certain person arrived back from in town, lovely little town, been to a travel agent and turned up with all these brochures on Machu Picchu. And my heart sort of, oh, thought she'd forgotten. We went up to Machu Picchu. That took a week, and it was really worthwhile. Wonderful place to go. The picture here, it's a bit of a funny looking picture, but it's actually a sunken ship. Valdivia was the home of the worst earthquake in the world on record, 8, I think, on the scale. And this was a 5,000-ton ship that was 6 miles down the river at a port, and it got washed up the river and wrecked, and the whole area sank a couple of meters. And there's all sorts of signs of the devastation still 50 years on. Lovely town, though. This whole property's got flooded. It was a shocking earthquake. It killed many, many people.
So this is Valdivia here. It's a lovely small city, lovely waterfront, looking down the river. Those of you who've been to South America, it's typical South American town with potholed streets, great pavements, doors opening off the street, onto houses, inside of houses. It's really exciting. Our boat was here, I think.
Yep, that's us there.
We're tied up to a
rafted up outside the
outside
the yacht. Some wildlife around. A lot of wildlife over there. Lovely birds and things, and that's just near the yacht club. And little fishing boats like this. This is a typical rigged fishing boat. Some of them have outboards, but they're so like this. This is down near the entrance to the river, the Valdivia River. The city's about 14 miles up the river itself. And so then eventually on November the 30th last year, we decided to head south to the Gulf of Ancud.
And this is the school bus that picked up or dropped off the kids on the rocks in front of their houses. They just scrambled up with their bags. The kids, we gave them some lollies, and they loved them. They giggled away and they said, goodbye, thank you. So it was lovely. This is a narrow entrance to a fjord, like Milford, got high mountains right enclosing us. We really felt quite overwhelmed here. It was the first of many such
Very deep, very deep. In fact, a lot of the anchoring, you're anchoring 2 boat lengths off the shore in 15 meters. And of course, it's sloping down so steeply that you then just run shorelines. And we just got into the habit of running shorelines virtually all the time. That's we found a shallow patch somewhere and walked on the shore for a while, and that was typical of some of the scenery there on a fine day. Wasn't always fine. Then we headed about 30 miles across from here, across the Gulf of Ankou towards Chiloe Island I showed you before. And we were sailing along 15, 20 knots of breeze, just sailing nicely. And next thing, the boat sort of slewed round and stopped, and we'd jammed the rudder. So soon worked out that we'd in a slot between the rudder skeg comes down like this, and the rudder comes down and there's balance underneath it. And in that slot there, which is probably about 4 millimeters wide, a 9 millimeter rope had got itself stuck in there. Fisherman's rope, mile long, floating line, and we then broke a steering wire. We had all the sails down, of course. It was a bit bumpy. Dived in the water, did various things. Fishermen came from over a mile away. No floats on the lines at all, but they have these things in the water there. And we tried turning the rudder with both an emergency tiller strapped onto the rudder head, the usual sort of thing that you need for Cat 1. And also we had a hole through the rudder blade, and dived in, put a line through that, and tied a knot each side, and put it onto a winch, and Karin ground away on one of our major winches while I heaved on the emergency tiller, and it just didn't move. So it was just a matter of leaving cutting it off each side, and then trying to sail the boat, or trying to get the boat to a safe place.
Say that in the midst of all this drama, Jim cut his foot when he was diving down, and so when he got on deck, he had blood pouring everywhere. So the whole thing was carried out with blood everywhere. We sailed about 4 miles east of the migrants there to anchor the boat, and then we found a path that we get into high water and a beach right beside the ramp. And it took 20 minutes to go out. So well, so this is the concrete ramp that we tied up to. It was really quite interesting. It gave us a view of life ashore too.
It's a little village with fishing boats coming and going, and that was what the ramp was for. We'd searched for ages all around this big lagoon to find somewhere, and this was the only place we could find, but it was very suitable.
Right, these are fish farms, salmon farms. We're counting on boats. For a long while, we saw nobody and nothing, but we saw a lot of food. They moved the house about, and they had a few farms. All the way down the road.
Pretty nice houseboat, isn't it? Okay. This is the Gulf of Phineas. We managed to get across here just before Christmas last year and worked our way down through here, through all these canals and things. Canal is the Spanish word for channel, and worked our way right down, all the way down, and this takes us down right through here, and this is the beginnings of the Magellan Strait down here. So overall, we see in a minute, I think it was this inlet here that we came in called Sino Iceberg, which is a lovely lovely place to spend Christmas. There is one town that is around about here called Porto Eden. There is nothing from up the top all the way down to there's one place here and the next one down here. So we're talking about several hundred miles, nearly 1,000 miles, where there's no supplies, no fuel, no nothing. And it's very much like Fiordland, but just more and more islands all the way through here. It's really quite complex. We did actually divert. As we came south, it got wetter and wetter and colder, and mostly from here on down, the wind was west or slightly north of west, but it didn't help because the wind would go from 5 knots to 30 knots to 5 knots, and at the same time, the whole time it was swinging through maybe 180 degrees, the wind shift. So consequently, you end up motor sailing quite a lot of the time, put up small headsail, staysail, and tend to keep the motor on because it just, otherwise it's just cranking sails up and down and in and out. Through here, there's a little cut through here, and you can come down from here down in through these canyons. That's the best description, because you've got mountains each side. It's only a quarter of a mile wide, and the land each side is 5,000 feet high, there or thereabouts. Um, and of course, the wind down there howls, and you can imagine what the woolly walls do in a situation like that. They just come down blasting through all over the place. There's a few little anchorages that you can get into, places you can get into and tie up. You get into this big gulf here and around to a place called Porto Natalis, which is right around here, and then you can actually get up into some wonderful anchorages. But here you've got the Andes, the chain with all the ice. You get to this point here, and you look out, and it's flat. It's all just pampas. The sun is shining here behind you. All the clouds are up in the air, and it's just a very, very sudden change. And so we spent a week, got a car and drove around and had a look around, and then went back to the water again, and then headed on down to the Magellan. Just there. Okay, this was our Christmas anchorage last year, and we'd had to spend 4 or 5 days getting out to get around the Gulf of Penas, or get around the peninsula there. What's remarkable about this is where I'm standing, and I took this photograph just 50 years ago. The ice right there where I'm standing is 100 feet thick. Quite spooky. So those glaciers are in a retreat. When we looked at all the books and things, and Chuck said, "Oh, we'll just go and anchor like we do around here, like you do around you, like you do everywhere. You know, well, why would you do anything else?" But we soon found that you drop the anchor in deep water quite often. But even in shallow water, you get into these tiny little places that are only big enough for maybe 1 or 2 boats rafted up. And you work the boat in by using stern lines and things, and pushing off the trees as you get in. But we were in here, and another gale, another front went through, and we had absolutely still water around the boat. The masthead was recording about 35, 40 knots, and out in the bay, just the other side there, the spume was lifting up. We had glassy, calm water around us. So that's why you get into those sort of places when it blows hard. This is typical of the thousands of miles of canals down through there, and you weave in and out between the islands, all the way down the coast. Lots and lots of rain. It rains 2 days out of 3, and if you want to go ashore for a walk, don't bother, because you go up to your knees in the mud and the slush, and you're almost confined to the boat most of the time. Not a soul to be seen anywhere. After we'd been to Porto Natalis, we headed back down, and this is a picture just taken just north of the Straits of Magellan. You can see the landscape there. The trees are down. There's very, very little growth, just scrubby growth and bare, barren granite, really. And plenty of hazards for ships. This one didn't make it, obviously. It's just gets more and more and more austere as you go south, towards what we would perhaps call the bottom corner, like Husica Point.
So the Magellan Strait's a horrible place. It's about 30 to 40 miles wide, with narrow, strong tides and little shoals. We got into the Magellan Strait, wind coast from the west, straight through Bruges Strait. And we asked the lighthouse, we report to the lighthouse, we asked the lighthouse what the weather was like. It was quite nice where we were, and they said, "Oh, no ripples, it's all really calm." So we thought about that as we surfed down the Magellan Strait, 35 knots from behind, going, "Where's the next anchorage? Find it now, fast." We just managed to get into one, but it's quite a scary place. There are 3 passes that lead south: the Beagle and the Zape, or the mission sail that we actually get from the AIS of Chile and the Martin. Then it was another wait to get around Breaknot, otherwise it was absolutely nothing. And we managed to get out and around on the granite. It was quite scary.
Great photography.